Right, let's take you back to our top story now. Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Motsoaledi, has applauded those who assisted in the arrest of an illegal border crossing syndicate. An 18-month operation has resulted in the arrest of 8 suspects at the Lebombo Border Post. They include 6 Home Affairs officials, a police officer and a Mozambican national. Motsoaledi was at the border when the arrests were made. He says this is a warning that the net is closing in on corrupt officials. The minister joins me now live virtually. Very quickly, Minister, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. Just tell us a little bit about, why did it take officials 18 months to be able to make this arrest?
Thank you, Masego, and good morning. Good morning to the viewers and the listeners up there. Well, it took them 18 months because when they started the operation, COVID struck. The tip-off we received 2019, COVID struck when they started the operation and the borders were closed. And you can't catch people doing wrong things at the borders when the borders are not functioning. Remember, when we went to lockdown level, when we started lockdown level 5, only trucks doing business were passing, not human beings. And this scandal is about human beings. So that's why it took so long. But the second reason that it took long, remember our courts want proof beyond any reasonable doubt. So we had to pick up evidence, but we also have to know who actually is involved, because the Lebombo Border Post is manned by 129 Home Affairs officials. The ones you named, as you can see, are 6. So the Hawks had to know exactly which official is involved, whether it's persistent or is once off. So we had to get all that information in order to be able to convince the court.
Now, Minister, you also call this a relentless and ferocious war against corruption. You mentioned yesterday during your address that there are more officials that have been arrested, one of them actually even sentenced to, I think, 8 years in jail. Is this not embarrassing for you as the Minister of Home Affairs, that you find yourself having to deal with officials who are this corrupt within the system?
You mean I must get embarrassed by arresting people?
No, embarrassed by the fact that it's happening, Minister. Of course, the arrests are welcome, but the fact that it's happening.
Embarrassed by the fact that we have got corrupt people in government or in society.
In government,
there
in
is
your department.
Nobody. Well, if you look at the APP, one of the things that I promised to do was to fight corruption. If you look at my contract, the contract agreement which I've signed with the president, one of them is to fight corruption, and that's what I'm doing. I'm not sure what is embarrassing about fighting corruption. If fighting corruption was going to embarrass, then we wouldn't be having the Hawks, we wouldn't be having NPA, we wouldn't be having SIU, we wouldn't even be having correctional services and the court. The fact that we have got all those things, it means in society, we do have corrupt individuals and we must get rid of them.
No, Minister, I think maybe let me ask you the question this way then. According to your statement, for instance, you were saying that your biggest pain was that it was a foreign national who seemed to be the leader of the syndicate, and these 6 Home Affairs officials were doing whatever she was saying. So I'm asking you in that context.
Yeah, it's embarrassing for the whole country. The question I was asking yesterday, Masego, is what's wrong with South Africans? How can South African men and women who are educated, who have been given a job to run their country, let a hawker, a foreign national from another country who is a hawker, to come and instruct them what to do, because she seems to be the one who was the mastermind. She knew exactly which officials will do the job. When our agents go there and approach this woman, she will know exactly which official to direct them to, who will do the job. That is the part that is embarrassing. It's not embarrassing to me, but to the whole South Africa, to everybody who's a South African, it is something that should embarrass us. How our own nationals can do something like that. And then in turn, nationals come and complain, a lot about immigration when they are the ones who are actually helping the country to be corrupted. That is the part that is embarrassing, and I believe it's embarrassing for the whole country, not only to me.
And Minister, also you mentioned that, for instance, there's money that was received by some officials, 300 Rand, for instance, that little to sell out a country.
Yeah, Masego, you know, when you sell out your country, I'm sure you must sell it for a little bit more. The fact that a person sells it for as little as 300, to me, I think is an aggravating factor. That this person doesn't care so much about their own country. That 300 Rand is enough for them to do, because that's exactly some of the monies that were offered by our undercover agents. They'll go there and say, look, please print this passport, blah, 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 I want to cross, etc. And they can see that is illegal, but they do so. And actually, Masego, when you introduced the topic, you said they were allowing foreign nationals in the country. That's exactly how the scam was working. The scam was working with foreign nationals who are already in South Africa, whose time to stay in South Africa has expired, and they want to lengthen it illegally. Let's say you are a foreign national, you come from a SADC country. In terms of the SADC protocol, you are not required to produce a visa to come into South Africa. All you are required is to produce a valid passport, and then you come in. But the law says you must stay only for 90 days and go back home. Now, what was happening is people who want to stay forever, they just collect their passports, put them in a taxi, send them to the border to these rascals, they stamp it as if the person has gone out, and their 90 days starts all over again. They keep on repeating until they are here in South Africa forever. That is how the scam was being conducted. So it was helping people to stay in South Africa forever when they are not supposed to be doing so. People who have actually come legally inside the country, and they can't leave, and the numbers keep on accumulating. That's exactly the essence of the scam.
And it goes against the fight against having people stay in the country legally as well. And then they, you know, like some of them, for instance, you were in Diepsloot a few years ago talking about a protest that was happening there with people saying that foreign nationals are killing South Africans, alleging that. And you were talking about the fact that they are untraceable because they are in this country illegally. So that, which happened, is going against that fight.
Oh, definitely. The other thing it can do, it can go against the corruption-busting power of the police. Because you can imagine, Masego, if police arrest somebody who is a foreign national who was committing a crime, and his passport has gone across the border on that particular day, he can go to court. He or she can go to court and say, no, the police say I've committed a crime, but look at my passport. I was not even in South Africa at that time. I had crossed the border, when actually it's only the passport that has crossed and not the person. And that will further the police case. So it has got very serious ramification, this action. That's why I said I regard it as actually high treason, more than just criminality and corruption.
So this then goes back to my point, Minister, and I understand you say that all South Africans should be embarrassed. Maybe I should ask you as Minister of Home Affairs what we're going to do about this, because the issue is rife. It doesn't only go with the Lebombo border, it's many of our other borders as well.
Well, we've got reason to believe it is, and that's why we have got our agents all over, and these arrests were just the beginning. But Masego, yesterday, after the arrest, I also introduced the members of the Border Management Authority. Remember that South Africa had no Border Management Authority. We had no authority which specifically manage our borders. That is part of this problem. Yesterday, I've introduced them. I introduced the Commissioner of Borders, Dr. Nakampe Masiapate. I introduced the Deputy Commissioner for Operation, Mayor General Chilembe. I also introduced the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services, Ms. Jane Chubana. Now, they've just started work last week, and their job is going to be doing the borders. I'm sure all of you, including yourself, Masego, you only know the Commissioner of Police. You have never known anybody called the Commissioner of Borders. Now, that has started from last week. And yesterday, I was saying this job of making sure that there is no corruption at the borders, it now falls on their shoulders. They will work together with the anti-corruption unit in Home Affairs. They will work together with the Hawks. But when they wake up every day, Their concentration and focus is at the borders and nothing else but the borders. Whereas the police were focused elsewhere inside the country. They had a lot of work. So we had to increase the hands that are fighting corruption at the borders.
And it's your face, Minister, that South Africans see. When the South Africans think of Home Affairs and the department, they think of you as the accounting officer.
I'm not the accounting officer, I'm the minister. The accounting officer is the Director General. But yes,
but South
I'm the
Africans
face of...
see your face, Minister.
Exactly. I was just correcting that I'm accounting officer. Accounting officers are DGs, not ministers. The ministers are political heads of department. And indeed, you are right. They are looking at my face. That's why it is me who's running around to try and get things right.
And Minister, we're heading to December now. We've seen, for instance, some of the situations that have transpired, particularly the border, Beitbridge Border Post. eNCA was there a couple of weeks ago with truck drivers stuck there. What's happening in terms of the situation at the borders and, us trying to avoid what happened last year?
Well, this team is developing a plan. But at the present moment, in Beitbridge, including Lebombo, where I was yesterday, if you check my press conference yesterday, the head of SARS in Lebombo was explaining that issue is seeing at the borders with the truck. It's not really directly Home Affairs. It's only that Home Affairs is responsible for borders. It's a SARS issue. It's a customs issue, not an immigration issue, because SARS is for customs, Home Affairs is immigration. It's about tax and goods, which Home Affairs do not control at all. But we work with them. But be that as it may, the problem is that SARS in South Africa is very efficient, is very automated. They can give a truck a pass through Beitbridge while the truck is still in Johannesburg, because they've got automated their systems. They know what the truck is paying. They know how much it's going to pay, and they can let it through. But when it arrived at the border, it found that our counterparts, especially in Zimbabwe and Mozambique, are still using manual system. In other words, they process every truck one by one manually. Now imagine having 1,400 trucks having been processed automatically in South Africa, but all arriving there at the border because they were given clearance in South Africa, only to find that to enter the other country, they must be processed manually. That is a nightmare. We are discussing with our neighbors. I've even asked the Minister of International Development to talk to our neighbors. Even the President himself, I asked him, because I'm saying this whole thing is making a mockery of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was signed in pomp and ceremony by the African Union, that they want a free trade all over the continent. But now when you impede free trade through this type of systems, archaic systems which won't fit in modern economies, it becomes a problem, Masego.
And of course, this is a multi-departmental issue as well, because if, for instance, especially with the corruption that we see at Home Affairs, if, for instance, officials within the law, take bribes to let those who've been arrested go, then it becomes a problem. So is there some type of communication between yourself and the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola?
We belong to the same cluster, the Justice Crime Prevention cluster. Ronald Lamola sits there. And in terms of the Border Management Authority bill, there's going to be a group of ministers who will serve more or less as the board of what's happening there. And of course, I've got cause to believe that ministers in the JCPS class will all be members of that committee. We deliberately decided against having a board like we have got in SOEs because of the problems that we experience with SOEs. We said ministers themselves must form that committee that will serve as the board of Border Management Authority. And it will be mostly ministers who are involved, the Minister of Police, the Minister of State Security, the Minister of DERCO, the Minister of Defense. They will all be members of that committee.
Very quickly, Minister, because I'm running out of time, what do you say to South Africans who are despondent in terms of border control in South Africa? South Africans who feel as though, it's too late, nothing else can be done, our borders are just open to just about anybody, and all officials who work there are somehow corrupt, or at least half of them.
It can't be too late. And it will be unfair to the other officials to say at least half of them. Taking an example from Lebombo Border Post, there are 129 officials working there. Our undercover agents try to approach all of them to see if they are doing this. And only 6 were found to be doing this persistently. The others were not arrested. They actually refused. And they told the agent, no, we're not going to allow you to pass through. So the fact that we have got rotten apples and corrupt people must not taint everybody who's working there as corrupt. Some of them are officials in Home Affairs are very honest. These people were caught by the counter-corruption unit in Home Affairs, which is headed by Advocate Connie Moise. And she's a woman who has arrested lots and lots of people with a team. Yesterday, a police official was arrested by his own colleagues who are straightforward. So the fact that we are fighting corruption cannot make people despondent to say, oh, everybody is just corrupt, nothing is going to happen. And it can never be too late to manage your affairs. I've just told you South Africa never had a border management authority. Now we have got it. Yes, it took for Parliament to pass that act because there was no agreement by various political parties on how to manage borders. But eventually, they did pass the act, and it's in operation, and people are starting to work. And so there can't be any despondency that is too late. It can never be too late to manage your affairs.